Hello, this is cjhoyle, and welcome to the 8th episode in my Eastern Ontario bike tour series. Today is day number 8 of my 9-day trip, and I'll be riding from the community of Pakenham to the Jones Falls Lock Station on the Rideau Canal. I'll begin my ride today by following along close to the path of the Mississippi River. After passing through Carleton Place, I'll break away from the river and head my way towards Perth, where I'll stop for lunch. Afterwards, I'll enter the rocky forest of the Canadian Shield and cross over Rideau Lake through the Narrows before reaching Jones Falls, where I'll be camping tonight. So today is Saturday, September 7th, 2019, and I woke up at the Riverbend Park campground at around 7 a.m. After a long rainy night in my tent, I loaded up my fuel tank with this bowl of campsite overnight oats. By around 8:15 I had my bike fully packed, and I was ready to begin my ride. The rain from last night has already completely stopped, but I'm wearing my rain jacket because it's chilly this morning, with the temperature only reaching 13 degrees Celsius so far. After retracing my way back through Pakenham, I crossed over to the east side of Ontario's Mississippi River using the historic 5-span stone arch bridge. It would have been more direct for me to have stayed on the west side of the river, but there's a particular farm over on this side that I'd like to ride past. As I'm riding this morning, I've started noticing an unusual clunking sound which seems to be coming from my front wheel. A few times I've stopped to inspect it to try and understand what might be causing the problem. It doesn't seem to be anything obvious, as the wheel bearing doesn't have any play in it and the wheel turns smoothly despite the loud noise that it's making. Here I'm approaching the small community of Blakeney. I noticed this large farm on the left, which is growing sunflowers. Assuming you already saw my video from yesterday, I'll spare you my sunflower facts this time. Just a little bit further down the road, this farm over on the right used to belong to Canadian YouTuber Matthias Wandel of woodgears.ca. He describes what he does as an engineer's approach to woodworking, and I've learned so much from watching his videos over the years. This blue building was his big garage workshop, but about a year ago he and his family relocated to Fredericton, New Brunswick. I continued riding south, and I'm now entering the community of Almonte. There's quite a steep downhill as I made my way towards Almonte's historic downtown, and I hit a fairly big bump when I was coming down it. Immediately afterwards I could feel my back wheel starting to feel spongy, so I pulled over, and within a few seconds, my wheel was completely flat. So I am carrying a patch kit which I could use to solve my problem, but to my luck the Almonte Bike Works is only 100 meters away. I was able to purchase a replacement inner tube, and while I installed it I asked the owner if he could take a look at my noisy front wheel bearing for me. As it turned out, all it needed was some grease added, and he generously refused my offer to pay him for his labor. With both my wheels repaired, I'm now able to explore the beautiful old streets of Almonte, which was first settled in 1818. This is the old post office, completed in 1891, which I recognized from a video that Matthias posted, where I got a tour of the inner workings of the old clock mechanism. The architect who designed that building also designed the Canadian Parliament buildings, which I saw back on day 5 of my trip. Almonte has a long history in the textile industry, and it's home to the Mississippi Valley Textile Museum. This community is also the hometown of James Naismith, the inventor of basketball. So the time is now 11 o'clock, and I'm back on the road heading towards my destination. Both Pakenham and Almonte are part of the town of Mississippi Mills, but I've now reached the town of Carleton Place. Situated further upstream on the Mississippi River, Carleton Place was first settled around the same time as Almonte. Since my bike repairs put me behind schedule this morning, I decided not to explore around this town and just keep on riding through. I'm now riding in the township of Beckwith, and the temperature has warmed up to 16 degrees Celsius. Similar to yesterday, the sky has stayed very cloudy so far today, but at least there hasn't been any more rain. I've now crossed into the next township, which is called Drummond North Elmsley. I've mostly been riding on a lot of really nice quiet roads, but as I'm entering the town of Perth, I need to ride on a short stretch of this busier one. Perth is situated on the Tay River, which is a left tributary of the Rideau River. The town was first established as a military settlement in 1816 as part of the response to the War of 1812. More than 200 years later, Perth has a population of about 6,000, and many of the historic buildings have been well preserved. The time is now about 1:15, and having ridden 70 kilometers so far today, I decided to stop for lunch at a place called the Cafe Hideaway. I enjoyed having breakfast food for lunch yesterday, so I decided to do the same thing again today and ordered something called a s'mores breakfast sandwich. After lunch I got back on my bike and started riding south away from Perth. This road has more traffic on it than what I prefer, but at least it has a nice paved shoulder for me to ride on. After continuing through the township of Drummond North Elmsley, I'm now entering Tay Valley Township. I spent most of the morning riding next to farmers' fields, but these rock faces indicate that I've now reached an area which is part of the Canadian Shield, the geographic feature which covers more than half of Canada. Over on my left, I'm riding past the entrance to Murphy's Point Provincial Park. As part of my quest to eventually camp at every provincial park in Ontario, I had originally planned on camping there tonight, but I changed my plan so I could ride further today and shorten my distance for tomorrow. Along this road I noticed a sign for another one of the 7 wonders of Lanark County, so I decided to stop and check it out. I followed a short path off the road which leads to the Silver Queen Mine, which operated from 1903 until 1920, extracting mica, feldspar, and apatite from the layers of the Canadian Shield. At the time, mica was an important commodity used as an insulator in electrical equipment, but also used for making the glass for lanterns and stoves. From here deep in the forest of Lanark County, all the mica needed to be transported to Ottawa for further processing before being shipped to markets around the world. This restored wagon illustrates how it was transported from here to the nearby Rideau Canal, which took it the rest of the way by barge. While I was leaving, I noticed this early detection trap for the emerald ash borer, and it looks like unfortunately this invasive insect has already made its way to this area. So after enjoying that interesting historic detour, I'm back on the road continuing my ride. Not far from there I spotted a doe, a deer, a female deer. At this time of year it's easy to distinguish the males from the females because the males will have already grown their antlers, which they lose and regrow each year. At first I was determined to win this staring contest that I was having with the deer, but then I remembered that I had places to go, so I let the deer win and continued my ride. After spending the last 24 hours or so in Lanark County, I've now reached the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville and entered the township of Rideau Lakes. So I've now arrived at the Narrows, where there's a lock on the Rideau Canal which lifts boats by a height of 1 meter from Big Rideau Lake to Upper Rideau Lake. To carry vehicles across the canal there's a manually operated swing bridge which was built in 1898. This bridge is rated to carry vehicles up to 5 tons in weight, but it's very well balanced, which allows it to be operated by the muscle power of a single member of the lock staff. Back in Burritts Rapids on day 1 of my trip, I rode across a similar swing bridge, but I didn't have the privilege of seeing it operating. The Rideau Canal is the oldest continuously operating canal system in North America, and its 202 kilometer route features countless examples of well-preserved functional technologies of the past. So Lock 25 is what raises and lowers boats through the Narrows, and it too is manually operated. Here you can see they're closing the upper gate of the canal to lower this boat from Upper Rideau Lake down to Big Rideau Lake. There's been virtually no wind today, and the water looks very calm and still. The Narrows Lock Station also features one of the 4 original military blockhouses that were built on this canal system to defend it against attacks from our neighbors to the south. Prior to the construction of the Rideau Canal, Upper Rideau Lake and Big Rideau Lake were both part of one continuous lake. The dam that I just rode across was built in the 1830s to create a step in the water levels of the 2 parts of the lake to simplify construction of a segment of the canal further upstream. I continued riding south from the Narrows, where there's a small pocket of farmland with lots of livestock out grazing in the fields. The boring gray sky that I was riding under has suddenly become much more dramatic. I got off the main highway, and I'm now approaching the community of Elgin, which I actually rode through back in my bike trip in May of 2019. I decided to make a stop at the Freshmart grocery store to pick up some food that I can eat where I'm camping tonight. The road from here to Jones Falls is the same one that I rode approximately 3 months ago on my previous trip in May. Prior to this point, all the territory that I'd covered on my bike over the past 8 days since leaving Brockville had been entirely new to me. It's a really different feeling suddenly passing landmarks that I recognized from my own previous video. The time is now 6 o'clock, and I pulled off the road into Jones Falls just as one of those big black clouds erupted into a heavy downpour. I'm not expecting this rain will last very long, so so I parked my bike and put on my rain jacket so I could walk around and explore the area with the remaining daylight. So Jones Falls is another lock station on the Rideau Canal, and it includes a total of 4 locks. The lock you can see here is Lock 39, which leads boats into this turning basin. After boats have reoriented themselves, they can enter Lock 40 to continue their way through the canal. All of the locks at Jones Falls were built with a lift of 4.6 meters, which was considered dangerously high in those days, so their construction needed to be of the highest quality. Locks 41 and 42 are located immediately after Lock 40, and this is what is referred to as a flight of locks. After boats have made it down through the 4 locks, they'll enter Whitefish Lake, where they can continue their journey towards Kingston. As I have been hoping, the rain is now completely stopped, and everything has become very picture perfect as the sun sinks into the horizon. Much like where I stayed on day 1 of my trip, Jones Falls is one of the many log stations where you're allowed to purchase a permit to camp here for the night. On my previous bike tour in May, I rode past Jones Falls, but I missed the turnoff and didn't have the chance to come and see it. When I mentioned this to my grandmother later in that trip, she was disappointed and told me that Jones Falls is beautiful. She's absolutely right, and I'm really glad to have this opportunity to see it while I'm camping here tonight. So prior to the construction of the canal, the water from upstream flowed through a stretch of rapids which lasted about 1.6 kilometers. The dam that you see here was built in order to flood those rapids and transform them into a navigable waterway. Constructed from large blocks of sandstone quarried from Elgin, the dam has a height of 18 meters, and it was the highest dam in North America when it was completed in 1831. 188 years later, the dam remains almost entirely untouched, with the exception of this hydroelectric retrofit that was added in 1947. These 3 large tubes direct water from upstream of the dam to the generating station building down at the bottom. In the Rideau Canal's spirit of maintaining technology in the way that it was originally built, these tubes are made from wooden planks in a similar construction as a wooden barrel. The Jones Falls generating station has a nameplate capacity of 2.4 megawatts, which is less than a modern wind turbine. This is the main weir for the dam, and it leads to a waterfall which would have carried the majority of the natural flow of the water prior to the hydroelectric retrofit. While I was enjoying walking around and learning about Jones Falls, it started to get dark very quickly, so I ate my dinner and found a place to pitch my tent for my final night of this trip. So over the course of my journey today, I rode my bike a total of 126 kilometers. Stay tuned for the final episode in my Eastern Ontario bike tour series, where tomorrow on day 9 I'll be riding south to the town of Gananoque, and then joining the waterfront trail to take me back to Brockville, where I started this trip. I hope you enjoyed joining me for day number 8. If you watched all the way to the end of this video, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.